welcome to Sivako, the road to Avatar. My name is Shaun Alexander, and I will be your guide to the world of Pandora and beyond. At the end of this episode is a special announcement, so please stick around and have a listen. Today, I am joined by two special guests. Both are returning, but they haven't returned together before, so this is a first time. Geoff and Matt. So, Geoff, how are you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Shaun. How are you?
I'm doing great. And Matt, how are you doing?
I'm very well, if suffering from a wee bit of, excuse me, post-Pandora depression, sort of dying to get back there and experience it yet more times. I'm not sure how many.
Yeah, I've got the same thing as well, actually.
Yeah. I need to get back in that cinema.
Yeah,
I got like the shakes going in where
Yeah.
I'm like, oh, I haven't seen it since before Christmas, or I feel
Yeah.
like it's all blurry in my mind. It's
Yeah.
not. It's not. I have the clearest vision of it. So yeah, today you're both joining me because this is the first episode. We're going to do a big old spoiler sort of chat. So this is your first warning, guys. We're talking spoilers for Avatar: The Way of Water. So if you haven't seen it by now, then don't listen to this unless you
Yeah.
really want it spoiled.
yeah. Bookmark this and come back to it when you've seen it.
Yeah.
Big time.
And I thought best way to do it is, we'll just talk about sort of big moments in the film that we enjoyed. If people do have things that they want to discuss and think, oh, maybe that's something that they didn't enjoy as much, we could talk about that as well. I don't know if there's that much of that to discuss. We'll find out.
No.
So why don't we start off with you, Matt?
Gosh, God, well, this is very. I mean, to pick one moment is very difficult, but I think that most of the moments that really lodge in my mind and kind of tantalize me and make me think about what's going to be coming down the road, in the subsequent sequels, it's probably the Kiri stuff. I'm thinking specifically her quote unquote epilepsy, when she's connected to the spirit tree, the Metcalina spirit tree, and she has the encounter with Grace, which I thought was, I mean, only Jim Cameron could pull off a scene where you've got one character played by Sigourney Weaver embracing another character played by Sigourney Weaver, and it just seems completely like everything is everything just joins up. It's one of those things. It puts it in front of you, this kind of weird proposition of this. Sigourney Weaver playing a 14-year-old alien girl and Sigourney Weaver playing, Grace Augustine, and they have this kind of embrace. And I just thought that was such an extraordinary moment. And obviously, I think that there's, the thing that really grabs me about it is that Kiri asks Grace very directly, who her father was. And then that's when things start going wrong. This is when Grace has kind of morphed into her avatar form, and then Grace is somehow kind of like pulled out of the encounter. Something is kind of something the answer is denied, presumably by whatever power is lurking behind the scenes, in the kind of the matter of or the kind of the electrochemistry of Pandora's hive mind or whatever it is. Awa kind of yanks Grace out of the encounter, and then Kiri has that kind of quote unquote epileptic seizure, and that just sort of fills your mind with all sorts of things about. I mean, the way that I thought about it is if Kiri is somehow an embodiment of Awa, then what? Then her connecting to the spirit tree is almost kind of like causing some sort of feedback loop or something like that. That it's kind of like meeting like, and the two. There's this kind of it's like sort of if you if you bring like ends of a magnet together, they kind of repel each other. So there might be something like that going on. But I thought it was just a brilliantly orchestrated scene. And then the other one, the other two scenes that really blew my mind on the Kiri front were when she gets a giant sea anemone to crush the one of the mini subs and slam it into kind of a rock formation, and then the sub pilot ejects from the vehicle, and while he's ejecting, she gets another sea anemone to grab him and presumably crush him. And then you've got like Rocco and Aonung, who were kind of obviously ribbing her earlier on in the film, just looking at each other like, what the hell, you know, and and then the other one, obviously, is when Kiri sends the luminous fish into the capsized and the sunken sea dragon, to give the Sullys a kind of a way out, kind of like a breadcrumb trail. I mean, I thought that was absolutely. I was looking at this. I was looking at that shot where it's kind of this, what I'm sure will become an iconic shot of Kiri with her kind of angelfish wing type arrangement, kind of fitted to her back, and sort of casting her hands around and the fish moving in the where she's asking him to go. And I was just completely awestruck by how real that looked. you know and so yeah, I think that she's definitely being sort of lined up as a kind of the MVP of the sequels. And yeah, I can see all sorts of things, like, I mean, are the RDA going to try and kidnap her or something like that? Because pretty soon they'll realize that she's got these extraordinary powers of command over nature. But I think the other stuff that stands out, that really stands out, is kind of from the last hour, and the way that you've got the contrast between the second act and the third act. So I think that you've got the second act, which is quite dreamy, and very much focused on what's going on in the underwater space, and almost these kind of hangout scenes that don't feel like they're necessarily story driven or plot driven. That they're kind of ways to spend time with the characters while the characters are spending time with each other, which is, I think is important as a story that's there, as a scene that's there to kind of get story through. I just love that idea of the whole underwater swimming as the experiential side of the film, as much as the banshee flying was the experiential side of the first film. And you've got this brilliant contrast between the second act with all of this dreamy, beautiful underwater stuff, and then the third act where things just go completely mental. And I'd say that kind of the pivot point between them is the whaling sequence, which I found really upsetting. And it's something that I'm surprised I haven't seen more stuff online about this, kind of more sort of Twitter commentary, I suppose. But I think that the whaling sequence is really upsetting because the way that Cameron presents it is that he's trying to kind of get you into. It's quite exhilarating, and he's trying to get you into the mindset of the people who are doing this, and then at the end he leaves you with the dead Tolkien, and with all of the bags, the inflatable bags attached to it, and there's the lament cue from the destruction of Home Tree from the first film, that's repeated, and there is that sense of something having been horribly despoiled, but it is almost kind of on a much more it's much more upsetting in a way, because it's kind of it's personalized to one creature, and so yeah, I think that what you've got is this beautiful sense of dynamics between the second act, which has got all the kind of the dreamy stuff, and then the third act, which is much more heavily action oriented, with the whaling sequence being a kind of a pivot point. And it's kind of like the light parts of the movie make the kind of the heavy bits feel heavier, and vice versa, and I think that the way that Cameron plays that contrast is fascinating.
So, Geoff, I wanted to ask you. So, we did mention Matt mentioned about Kiri and specifically like about the epilepsy. I want to hear from you both and see what you think in terms of, obviously, do we think that's actually epilepsy, or is this just the human understanding for epilepsy?
Um, I'm not sure on that actually. I will uh, side with what Matt was saying there. I found Kiri fascinating, and brilliantly played by Sigourney, and that bit where she has the she meets Grace. It goes from kind of quite tender and quite moving, and you can sort of feel, Kiri's kind of yearning to want to know more about herself and everything, to then quite scary with, Grace turning into her avatar and then sort of slightly withering, if I remember rightly, before, like you said, Matt, kind of being pulled away from her. And then it goes into the bit under with water with the spirit tree, and she's seizing, and all of her dots on her body are kind of flickering and stuff, like a sort of weird skeleton type thing. And it was quite a kind of
Yeah, or like a busted tube light or something.
yeah, and
Like
it was
kind of electrical charge.
yes, that's right. Yeah, and it was quite a kind of quite shocking, quite sort of scary image. So yeah, I wonder whether, because my theory is that she is some sort of physical embodiment of Awa, maybe mixed with Grace, that happened in the failed attempt to put Grace's conscious in her avatar body at the end of the first film. So yeah, maybe like you said, it's a kind of feedback loop of sort of Awa meeting herself in a way, or maybe there'll be, Cameron and the writing team will, pull something else out of the bag that we aren't expecting. But I love that it wasn't resolved by the end of this first film, and that, Jim said that each film has got its kind of standalone, story, but there'll be threads that hang over. And actually, it was nice that it wasn't a cliffhanger ending to it all, and that chapter was done and closed, and now we can kind of move forward, but with narrative threads going through it all. And also, like you were saying, Matt, I like the way that, like, the first act of the film is sort of reintroducing everything and kind of getting us back up to speed, and then the second act is establishing this new world, and giving us this hangout time, and to kind of vicariously experience that the way the characters are, before then going into the heavier action stuff. And I must say that the one worry I had about the film going into it really was that the kids weren't going to work for me, and I was a bit concerned, like, why are we sort of maybe taking the focus off Jake and Neytiri, who are the characters that I'd grown to love in the first film. But it's that act two, like you were saying about Matt, hanging out with them. That's what made me, really grow to like the kids, and enjoy all of that stuff. And it was so kind of fun and carefree, and just wonderful, which is then what makes that darker stuff in Act Three much more effective, because you've grown to care about these characters, and the whole thing is motivated by character. There's cool action and set pieces and all of that, but there's always a character moment going on with it. Nothing is ever just for the fun of it because it looks cool. There's always a bit of plot movement or something with a character, or even like the guy on the Tolkien hunt, who loses his arm.
That was extraordinary.
Yeah,
That got
he,
a big roar of
yeah,
approval.
yeah. There was people that sort of quietly cheered in the screening I was in, and
Yeah.
he deserved it, and
Can was absolutely furious.
yes, yeah, because that bit when they fire the harpoon at Can, and he just moves his head, and his horn
deflects
thing,
off his
yeah.
horns, and then it smacks into the. Does it blow up one of the crab suits? I think
it does. I
or,
think,
or a mini
and
sub,
sends
something like that.
yeah, sends one flying across
flying into another or something.
deck of the boat. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I've slightly gone off track here, I'm afraid, Sean. I can't remember what your original question was, but yeah, for me, as a standout moment, genuinely, the whole thing, like, I can think about every bit of the film, and something that I loved, and that worked for me. But probably the main, if I was going to single it out to one thing, I think it would be the relationship. It would be the family aspect, but specifically Jake with Nataem, and Loak as well, because I think since I've had kids now, anything that involves kind of family kind of danger or loss or anything like that always kind of really gets me more than it did previously. And and I think if anyone has ever had kind of a difficult relationship with a parent, then the plot line here is something that can be kind of related to. So, I could kind of see and feel a bit, how Loak felt when he's trying to, get his dad's affection and attention, and step out of, Natayam's shadow. But then, on the flip side of that, Natayam loves his brother and is looking out for him and sort of trying to, bring him in a bit more. But it's all just born out of Jake, trying to protect them and perhaps not doing it quite right, but doing it the way he knows how because of
Yeah,
his military background.
yeah. I think that's the thing that really stood out about the kind of the overall tone of the movie is it makes me think about what Jim said when we saw him at the Empire event about how the first movie is very much kind of a classic Joseph Campbell hero's journey that leaves Jake in a kind of an elevated state. He's completely transformed. His outlook has transformed. his physicality is transformed. He's a different species. And not only that, he's Torok Makto, so he's kind of he's had this kind of incredible kind of ascendancy to this kind of mythic status. And what The Way of Water does really, really brilliantly, and almost from the word goes, it busts him right down from mythic status to a controlling dad with anxiety issues.
And he doesn't believe the the hype that he's been given and that pedestal he's been put on, and about being Torok Makto, and that's explored a little bit more in the High Ground graphic novels as well. He's quite clearly it doesn't feel like he warranted it and deserved it. And I was going to say the bit when Natayam dies, it was just awful because it was so careless in the way it was done. And there's quite a few instances of showing the effects of war and stuff, and it just little moments. I mean, not just a big fighting, but he lost his life through a couple of rogue bullets, and it wasn't even a big heroic movement or anything like that. And then
it was literally as they were trying to bail out of the sea dragon.
That's it, yeah.
And I think it was just he caught a glancing shot that was deflected off a couple of railings. And,
I think so. You don't even really notice it initially,
and there's no squib or anything. It's only when he's in the water, and then you actually realise, he's been hit.
Yeah,
and then it becomes clear that he's been shot right through, and then that's the point where you go, oh.
That's it. Yeah. And there's a real loss there. With him. He can't come back. Other than obviously through memories in Awa, which I'll come to in a sec. But what it then did was enable Loak to kind of step up and out of the shadow, and then he saves Jake's life. And took the teachings he'd had from Soraya earlier in the film and brilliantly used them there in that moment. And I think it enabled Jake to see him for who he was and who he is. And then the bit that really affected me both times I've seen it, it's so silly really, but it's such a small bit. But when they're on Payakan's Finn at the end, and Jake says to Loak, "I see you, son." Which is essentially, I love you, son, which is what he's been wanting.
I can't think of that stuff without wanting to cry.
Yeah, I know, and it's Sam Worthington delivers the line.
He is great in this film.
Oh, he is. And he's really underrated, I think, because he's
so underrated.
He's not a big personality on the red carpet and all of that. He's humble and casual and all of that, but he plays the dad stuff brilliantly. When you see him with the kids when they're younger, flying them around and stuff, and he does, the tough dad thing and the tender husband brilliantly, and the bit when he says, "Let's get this done," when the eclipse is happening, and he's got to go in for the fight and stuff, and I think he's really underrated, really. But that bit with Loak where he says that to him, and you can tell that's all that Loak wanted. All along,
Well, it's almost kind of like he is recognizing in Loak that Loak is effectively, Torok Makto when it comes to Tolkien's.
Yeah.
And it's him realizing that Loak himself is having this kind of ascendancy like he once had.
Yes, well, they didn't believe him, did they? Earlier,
Yeah.
they thought that the Payakan was a killer, and don't do it, etc., etc.
Yeah.
And now he's seen actually, you've taken to that as easily as I did to Banshee
Torok.
riding and
Yeah.
Torok and stuff. Yeah.
I think it's so interesting as well because obviously one scene that stands out when we've been talking about this like father-son relationship is the sort of there's like a parallel scenes they have, which is Loak trying to learn how to ride the Elu, and it's Jake learning to ride the Skinwing, and it's the two of them, being hot-headed, being like, I got this, and then immediately being shown up. And it shows just how much Loak is just his dad again.
Yes, yeah.
Yep.
You think Jake's got it on the Skinwing, don't you, to start with? And Tonawari's kind of like, oh, okay, he's got it. And then Jake's like, yeah, I got this. And then he gets absolutely owned by it.
Yeah, I love the bit where he gets ditched and then he kind of resurfaces and you see the Skinwing basically flying behind his head.
Yeah.
It's almost like, nah, and he's just like, in the water looking really, pissed off.
So for me, one of the big relationships I want to talk about is that of Spider and Quaritch. So first of all, yes, surprise, Spider was Quaritch's son, as we all expected, I think, by that point.
And they didn't even try to make some kind of weird, contrived, mystery thing about it. It was just.
I'm so glad they didn't. I'm so pleased they didn't go the sort of Empire Strikes Back route of it, of being like, surprise, I'm your dad.
Yeah.
When in reality, sure, like get that out the way, and then you could actually deal with the actual character.
You're right. That. Yeah, exactly. Explain that, and then we're good to go with everything that unfolds from that, rather than playing that mystery out over a film or two, which I think ultimately is probably not that big a mystery to have a reveal at the end of it anyway.
It's not as interesting as a mystery as what's going on with Kiri, and I think you've only got you've only got space for one mystery like that.
Yeah, and what you get more out of Quaritch and Spider is the conflict and drama that will follow from that, rather than the equivalent of will they, won't they? Is he, isn't he?
Yeah.
I think you're right to have gotten that out of the way pretty quickly. Was the right move, and it led to some interesting stuff already, didn't it?
Yeah, so I think the big moment is that Spider saves Quaritch towards the end from drowning.
Yes, this is where I see people on Twitter, they don't like Spider, do they?
Yeah, so to me, look, okay, so let's get this out of the way. I think for me, I love what they've done with Spider's character in terms of that conflict. So not only has he conflicted in terms of like, okay, so Quaritch is my dad, so I kind of like him because he's my dad, and even though he's not my dad because he keeps telling me he's not my dad, but also suddenly you got this shift in a dynamic for how he feels towards the Sully family, because Neytiri was literally about to kill him.
Yeah.
And that the repercussions of that like face off are going to come into play in the third one, I think.
But there's massively. That bit when she's going feral on the RDA guys on the boat, and he's watching, isn't there? And he's terrified, and
he knows that he has to conceal himself, otherwise, she will just indiscriminately wipe him out.
It's made clear throughout the film that she's not his biggest fan anyway. And just as an aside, I was terrified of Neytiri in that bit in the film. Also, another great. Bit of performance there, and underrated again by people. Do you think, as another aside, because the actors are digitally presented in the film, people overlook the acting because you can't see their actual faces and things?
Oh, for sure. Like, I think, we've known that for years. Anything since, like, basically Andy Serkis. Every, like, motion capture performance is, applauded for how good it is, but it's never to the same degree at which, like, a regular performance is.
No.
I think there's motion capture performances out there that are as good as things that have won Oscars easily.
100%. 100%.
Yeah, I mean, I thought Josh Brolin was brilliant as Thanos, and it was a great performance.
I think my favourites are probably Andy Serkis as Caesar.
Yes,
in the new Planet of the Apes trilogy.
Yeah.
Bill Nighy as Davy Jones, which is
Yeah,
just
it
phenomenal.
still looks great, the CG on that. But do you know what
Yeah, yeah,
the common thread with all of these is that they're genre pieces, and
yeah,
that is often overlooked,
yeah.
by the Academy for the Oscars and stuff like that. So kind of, you know, you could deliver an incredible performance behind digital, makeup and just be overlooked because
Yeah,
it was in a fantasy film or
yeah,
something,
yeah. I think the
which
other
which
ones that
is
really
so,
strike me, other than the Avatar ones, that on that kind of level, which I can kind of considered, Oscar worthy, probably Billy Crudup as Doctor Manhattan in Watchmen,
mm,
just amazing. I mean, really, really amazing, and
yeah.
totally gets the character, the heart and the soul of that character. And yeah, I think that you kind of wonder what sort of factors have to conspire for mocap performance to be recognised as a kind of a quality.
Yeah, maybe they need a separate category for that stuff now.
I'm against that. Yeah, I mean,
Really?
I'm against that in the same way that I'm against having a kind of a animation and live action film split in the Oscars.
Yeah.
I think it kind of what it does is it sort of silos things off,
Mm.
and it works out very conveniently. Because like all live action movies, movie makers know that they can't be challenged on
Yes.
that level
Yes.
by an
Yeah.
animation because it's all siloed off, and then all the actors who don't use who don't go in for mocap will be able to say, oh, this is rather convenient for us because we can't be challenged by a mocap performance if it's
Yeah.
siloed off
That's
over
true.
there.
Yeah.
So I really do think that it has to be a level playing field.
And Avatar, for example, it's not an animated film because of the way it's worked with the actors. And I've done a little bit of reading about stuff because we talked, I think, when we were in London about the scenes with Spider, for example, being integrated into fully digital stuff, and how was it done, and was he digital, and and all of that stuff, and the work on that is absolutely incredible. But he's there, and he's real, and the way it's been put together and everything. So it's more than an animated film. It is live action work, and Cameron's directing the actors, and they're on the set, in its minimal form and everything. So yeah, it is a shame that that these performances get overlooked. But I was just going to say, I just made a note here as we've been talking. So we were talking about Spider there with Quaritch, and the interesting thing of, Quaritch is his dad, and so therefore he kind of likes him, but he knows he's a bad guy, and what does all of this do to his relationship with the Sullys? But there's quite a lot of parallels in the film, both in this film itself and with the first film, and so Spider and Quaritch is kind of a mirror of Jake and Loak in a way, and also I felt that Quaritch's journey in Way of Water, it mirrors a lot of stuff, even on at least one occasion, right down to a shot of Jake's in the first film. So when Quaritch goes to get the Banshee, and he's just going to trank it, and then he thinks, oh, Jake did this for himself, did he? Right, I'll have a go at it. And the Banshee, screams at him. It's exactly the same kind of shot as when Jake's Banshee does in the first film. But I think Navi Quaritch is going on quite an interesting journey. To parallel what Jake did in the first one, and I wonder which path he's going to take as it all progresses and where he's going to go.
Yeah, yeah. There's lots of that sort of knife edge type stuff.
Mm.
Kind of seesaw type stuff. I mean, I actually thought that the Spider and Quaritch relationship was it was quite a lot like the Jake and Quaritch relationship in the first film, in the sense that you know Quaritch was the kind of the bad guy on Jake's shoulder, whereas
Mm.
Grace was the kind of the good, the angel on his shoulder.
Yeah.
And he was kind of being pulled in those two sort of directions at the same time. And what you got with Spider is he obviously, I mean, I could tell in that Banshee sequence where Quaritch goes after his ride, that once he'd kind of come up from the cliffside, and everybody found that he hadn't actually tumbled to his death
Yeah.
and been thrown off the Banshee. Spider was actually quite impressed.
Yeah.
He was visibly
He
impressed,
was,
and
yeah.
almost like that there was a kind of my dad done good type thing.
Yes.
And I think that the him rescuing Quaritch was really he was listening to his own sort of better angels, while at the same time, it's almost like he kind of brought him up to kind of, okay, I'm not going to let you die, but by the same token, once you kind of revived and you're sort of slumped there on the rock formation, kind of gasping a bit, looking a bit sorry for yourself, I'm going to make it clear that I'm not impressed by what you've been up to.
Yeah. But then Quaritch wanted him to come with him, didn't he? He held his hand
Yeah.
out to him and stuff, and you can see
that bit was brilliant.
Yeah,
it's such a subtle little moment.
Yeah,
but
it is.
It's where Quaritch says to him "son" for the first time, but actually
Yeah.
means it as in like, no, I see you as my son now.
Yeah.
And it's almost as impactful as that "I see you" from
it
from
is.
Kate to Loat.
Yeah, and it's a development for for Quaritch there, because earlier in the film he says, I'm not the same guy. I have his memories and things, and that's interesting in itself. Because my initial thoughts were going to be, it's just Quaritch just dumped in a new body, but maybe it's not as straightforward as that, and you can see things in the way he talks and behaves that he's not quite the same, and he is a little bit different. So I wonder where he's going to go in the other films. And
I thought it was quite interesting that he initially didn't have any memories of his own death, but they kind of worked out a way of putting that in there by him viewing the dash cam footage from the amp suit, so that he essentially he was able to kind of see from his own previous body's point of view what it was like to be killed in that way. So it's almost like he's kind of at one remove from that moment, but he has internalized it. And so he does know about
Mrs. Sully.
Mrs. Sully, the batshit crazy wife and all that sort of stuff, but because he's at one remove from it, maybe that gives him an opportunity to not be defined by it, and I think that there's a quite interesting scope there for him to realise that perhaps he's been used as a kind of a pawn by sort of the higher up civilians that he detests in the RDA, and that maybe that there is some scope there for him to rebel. I mean, it's interesting. Are they going to go that way, or are they going to go in more of a sort of a obsessive, nasty villain type way? Is he going to double down on the kind of the stuff that we don't like about him? That's sort of fascinating.
I feel like Cameron said, this film was kind of the entree for the meal, and now 3 and 4 and 5 are going to build upon this, and I think that we're going to go off in directions that we didn't expect. And Cameron's always done great villains and great heroes, and I think Quaritch becoming kind of, like you just said, Matt, kind of doubling down on his revenge and all of that, I think it would be a bit obvious for that to happen. So I think
me too.
I'd like to think it will go some way different, and I'm also intrigued by the next film, supposedly focusing on what Cameron's calling the Ash People. And
that's fascinating.
Him saying, we've seen good Na'vi, but what happens when we see bad Na'vi? And already that's another development in things, and it's mixing stuff up, because I've seen a few people complain that Way of Water is the same as the first film, and
I've got absolutely no idea how anybody could think that.
No, it's not the same at all.
Such a different movie.
Yeah,
it is such a completely
there's parallels, but they are character led, and
there's parallels and motifs and refrains that are kind of little bits and pieces, like repeated shot compositions.
But there's
like
reason for all of that. And like you said,
but fundamentally, it's a really different kettle of fish.
It is, and people will watch Star Wars as part 1, 2, 3 or whatever. Well, that's the same here. It's when we watch these all together, it's going to be one big long story.
Yeah, it's going to be a glorious tapestry.
Yeah, I'm so excited for all of that. But back to Way of Water, we've got years worth of adventures to come.
So for me, another moment that I thought that was really good, and Matt, you mentioned it earlier, it was that Tolkien hunting scene, and I think that to me is definitely the most impactful. And I think as well, it's that, as you said, it's about that build up from the fact that we see Loak building a relationship with Payakan, and also seeing the Metcaina with their relationships with all the Tolkien and how it's
Yeah,
they're on a level playing field. It's not a pet and owner relationship. It
yeah,
is
yeah,
we are brothers and sisters.
yeah. Well, I think what happened with the whaling. Yeah, I think what happens with the whaling sequence is that it's happening kind of in the immediate context of the Tolkien homecoming sequence, which I just thought was absolutely lovely.
Yeah.
Just absolutely lovely, where all the Tolkien come back and then they're hanging out with the Metcaina and they're swapping stories and all this sort of stuff. And it's like, these are sentient beings,
Yeah.
you know?
And
And
do you
then,
know what else I was lovely? Sorry, it was Loak with Payakan. At one point in the film, I thought we're watching a blue alien boy talking in subtitles to a giant whale, and I am here for this.
yeah,
And
Via alien sign language, by the way.
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely, and
yeah.
papyrus font, and and I thought Payakan had a distinct personality, and I loved the bit when he Loak got him to, he held onto the fin and got him to swim.
Yep.
He was going faster, and then he blasts up out of the water, and Loak flips off and stuff like that, and
hmm
he says to him, "We're friends," and
hmm
I thought, I can't have a cry over a giant whale, and
But there
but
you were.
yeah. Thank God for 3D glasses, but it was beautiful, and
Yeah.
and also a special note for Simon Franklin's music.
Oh,
I've listened to
amazing.
the score on repeat since I got it, and the Payakan track is just beautiful with the cello, and it just they both more parallels with those two characters, and I hope we see Payakan again in the other films. I thought that what they had was just great together.
Yep. Yep.
Uh,
I'm quite interested in who's going to make Payakan's tux for the Oscars.
Yeah, yeah, he'll just get overlooked because he's
Yeah,
digital.
yeah.
oh.
But he'll have a nice seat in the middle somewhere.
Yeah, the entire auditorium.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. They'll stick an aquarium in there.
yeah.
Yeah.
So Matt, is there another moment that you want to highlight?
Gosh, I think that the Jake and Neytiri killing spree on the Sea Dragon warrants some
Yeah, that was
mentioning.
badass. Yeah,
It was full uncut, pure badass.
yeah.
And I thought that was remarkable.
The music track for that is called "Bad Parents," which I
Okay,
think is quite apt when
very apt, very apt. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I think it was uh that they'd kind of snapped,
Mm,
and their kind of higher brains had just gone completely offline, and they were completely fixated on just the job of absolutely rinsing these people
yeah.
for everything they could get. It was just it was remarkable.
It was kind of watching a fantasy fulfillment type thing. As a parent, if anything ever happened to one of my kids, you have sometimes have these sorts of, well, what would you do in a
Yeah,
when you're watching a film, what would you do if your kid was taken, or whatever, and oh yeah, I'd be like Liam Neeson in Taken or whatever.
that's
The
it.
truth is none of that would happen, but but so seeing them kind of going out for revenge like that,
Yeah,
was like,
yeah,
oh yeah, putting myself in, and I think anyone in the audience, parent or not, can put yourself in that mindset and think, oh yeah, I see where they're coming from and why they're doing that, and
yeah, yeah,
it's a rage of loss and revenge and all sorts of stuff going on.
yeah.
It was a great sequence.
Yeah, yeah. I think what really did it for me, and it's something that can be said for the film as a whole, actually, is that this is a scene that took an awful lot of technical acumen to
Mm,
create, and everything that you're looking at pretty much is pixels on some level or other.
yeah,
But it taps into something that's completely primal, and I think
yeah,
that's what's so great about both the Avatar films, that they're these kind of high technology creations that really feed into and tap into and harness primal responses and
yeah,
reflexes. And I think that kind of goes all across the piece.
yeah. Well, if you don't care about the characters and you can't relate to them, no matter what they look like in any film, it's irrelevant. It doesn't matter,
Yeah,
does it?
yeah,
I mean, when I saw it for the first time, people was getting up to leave at the end and stuff, and there was a lady few rows in front, and I don't know whether she knew the people in the row behind her, but she stood up and they were chatting, and I heard her say, "I've been crying for the last 20 minutes,"
Yeah,
and there was a number of other remarks as I left the screen like that, and people chatting and things, and I think people are they are connecting to the characters and getting moved by it, and
100%, 100%.
it's great to
Yeah.
have that kind of emotion in it.
Yeah, I mean, I remember watching the first one. I mean, I was a soggy mess from
Mm,
the destruction of Home Tree right the way through to the end,
yeah,
And you're talking about going via some of the most, kick-ass action stuff that's ever been committed to film. And I was just a mess all the way through.
yeah,
And it was the same with the last half hour of The Way of Water.
yeah,
That there was this, um, incredible layering of action scenes, which I thought was done so
yeah,
well. The way that one sequence kind of slipped into the next, and I was just I was bowled over and awestruck, and at the same time deeply affected.
yeah.
And Yeah, I mean, I think that. I think I really like the opening of the movie as well. In terms of how you get that sense of sort of that very kind of it's almost like a montagey kind of digest of how
Yeah,
their lives have been panning out since the humans departed. And then when the humans arrive again, the way that it's done from Jake's point of view is kind of as there's another star in the sky.
yeah,
That is a very kind of primal. He's almost kind of like watching the sky with a kind of an animal intent
yeah.
and scrutiny, and then it's by seeing another star that he realizes that the humans are coming back, and then again there's that sort of feeling of something being horribly despoiled when all the starships descend and use their thrusters to
Oh,
blast away the
yeah.
the
It-
forest and
They're
and
coming to Pandora because they've destroyed Earth and it's
yeah.
uninhabitable. So they're coming here to just take it for themselves. And in the High Ground graphic novel, General Ardmore is in it a bit more,
Oh,
and
okay, interesting.
she says to them, we'll something along the lines of get you to sign over that this place belongs to humans, and you think it doesn't, but the audacity to come in and
Yeah,
just be like, yeah, we're taking it, but they're coming here because they've wrecked Earth, or we've wrecked Earth, and then like you just said, Matt, they're landing their ships and just decimating
yeah.
everything underfoot.
Basically strolling in there like they own the place.
Yeah,
Hmm.
exactly, and then
And
wrecking it all
yeah,
anyway. So they've come from somewhere that they've wrecked, they're coming somewhere new that they've wrecked, and they're
yeah,
wrecking it. And yeah, I just think we are painted so badly in the film as a race,
yeah,
justifiably so. And like you were saying about the Tolkien hunting sequence, when I saw the film second time, I could kind of take things in a bit better,
hmm,
because it is a lot. First, for days after it, my head was kind of buzzing with thoughts and everything.
yeah.
It's an awful sequence in that that stuff happens, and it's painful to watch it.
Hmm.
So the humans coming in and just thinking they can take the planet and do what they want with it is, yeah, it's awful.
So the way that it sort of pans out is that so it's a year. It cuts to a year later after the humans first
Yeah,
return,
and that's what High
and in that,
Ground covers. Sorry to
okay,
interrupt.
yeah,
Yeah, High Ground covers some of what happens within that year,
yeah.
I think.
But in that year, humans had managed to kind of find out enough about Tolkien's to know that they have this fluid inside them, this
Mm,
serum inside them that can stop human aging. I mean, you've got to wonder like what process they went through, what kind of horrible butchery
yeah,
they went through in order to find that out. And it's when you sort of start to think about the things that have gone on behind the scenes. It kind of adds dimension to what's
yeah.
going on in the scenes.
Do you know that I was thinking actually that would be a good comic or novel or whatever, but to see how the humans discovered Pandora in the first place and that it was
Yeah,
could be habitable for them and stuff.
yeah, yeah,
Sometimes I think you get spin-offs and stuff, and you think. I don't think we needed this. I'm not interested enough in this prequel, or
yeah.
this character having a side project or whatever. But that would be quite a good thing, not for a feature film, I don't think, but to see
It would be a good
how
graphic
that.
novel, I think. Yeah,
Yeah, it would work well for that. Yeah.
yeah. The whole idea of you know, who were the prospectors?
Mm,
What planets did they look at?
yeah.
You know, and then you've obviously got someone who's in charge of deciding. Yeah,
Yeah.
Pandora is the one we're going to go for. And then once they've decided they're going to go for it, what was first contact like?
Yeah.
Once they kind of barged in for the first time. Yeah, I think
Yes.
that would be amazing. That
Yeah.
would be really amazing.
What did you guys think of Loak and Soraya? Oh, sorry, I've got an alarm going off in the building here. It's because it's a Wednesday. I'm all right. It's not burning. Yeah. What did you think of Loak and Soraya? They had eyes for each other from the moment they first saw each other, didn't they?
Yeah, for me, I really liked that relationship
Yeah.
and how it was developing, but they didn't take it all the way just yet.
Yes.
Because, these are still kids. They're still finding themselves. And obviously, that we've already got a lot of other story going on.
Yeah. Yeah.
To throw in a full on like romance as well on top of it would have felt like you're rushing things way too much.
Yeah.
And I feel like we're going to just see that develop over the next few films as well.
Yeah.
And Soraya for me is like one of the ones I'm super interested to see where they go with her character, because she's very similar. Like her role is similar to what Neytiri's role was in terms of the first movie.
Yeah.
But I think the characters themselves are quite different, and
Mhm.
especially how they sort of handle. Soraya's a little bit more gentle touched with Loak than Neytiri was with Jake.
Yeah.
In terms of learning the ways. And I'm just curious to see where they take that character. And I think is it Bailey Bass is the actress, and I think she's
That's right.
fantastic in it. She was so
Yeah.
good.
Yep.
She's such a kind of gentle, soulful character, and the stuff she was saying about the way of water and that whole kind of monologue she has that then Loak quotes back to Jake later. Even though she's a young character, she's got this knowledge and this connection to everything, and I think that's why she has a good friendship with Kiri as well. Because I think she finds her interesting.
Yeah, there's a lot of kindred spirits type stuff going on
Yeah.
there. Yeah, there's almost like a kind of a sort of burgeoning sisterhood.
Yes. I just remembered another bit that I liked, which is when the boys have had that fight over Kiri, and Jake then tells Loak to clear off. You've done enough, and then he says to Natayam, "How did the other ones look?" And he says, "Worse."
Yeah,
And he
so
says,
much worse.
Yeah, and he says, "That's good."
That's good. Yeah, that's good. Get out of here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just
awesome.
a lovely little moment like that.
Yeah. No, I
You know
love
that
the
actually brings me back to it was something that I saw on Twitter, and I think you both probably saw it as well, which was this talk about Jake and him being like a bad parent, and there was a whole like discourse about him, and obviously him being like a military background.
Yes, I think I commented on that, and no one replied because probably because I was spitting truth.
Because basically, I think it was the pop culture detective. I think it was, or someone who's basically saw the film and was like, "Oh man, I really don't like how patriarchal the role is in terms of Jake and him being like so hard on the kids and trying to like have this sort of American nuclear family." But then when you consider like Jake is, he's from a military background, and he's he's basically grown up, like spent nearly half his life almost as an avatar at that point.
Yep.
Because obviously he was what, in his early 20s. It's then been what, 15 years. That's a long time. And then suddenly like obviously, even though he's integrated into the Na'vi, but he's not fully there yet, and he's still got this sort of like thing of being like, I'm still a soldier, I've still got to protect, and it's still those values he still remembers.
Yeah, I mean,
And
he's
he's
still
kind of
sort of
proven wrong, but that he's like proven wrong, that's not the way to do things in a way.
Yeah, I mean, he's drawing on what he knows. I mean, it's strange. This whole discourse, the Jake discourse, which has been, sort of bubbling under, and then the spider discourse, which has been, sort of the major kind of bee in people's bonnets. It just sort of reveals to me that most people who comment on pop cultural things don't understand drama. They understand kind of they're coming at everything from this sort of position of sort of ideological purity.
Mm.
And what they don't understand is that if you don't chuck in, sort of flaws like, Spider kind of dithering about whether he, likes being with a Na'vi or whether he likes hanging out with his dad and torching villages or whatever, which he obviously doesn't like. I mean, he says one or two words about that. He actually says, "This is wrong. This is bonkers. Don't make me do this again." And then Jake with his sort of controlling dad issues. I mean, this is why you do this stuff. This is, the kind of the flaws are why you do this stuff. I mean,
Yeah, but they're not
drama is all
interesting
about,
if they're not flawed. And
yeah,
and sometimes in drama and film and whatnot, you you get given not what you want, but what you need, because you might want a happy ending, but it's not as interesting as there being a drama and difficulty getting there. And
it's got to be difficulty.
yeah, it's got to be. And also, I think people are talking about the Spider and Quaritch stuff. And how long's the film been out now? A couple of weeks. It's that conversation is still ongoing, and it becomes a talking point whether people are for it or against it. I mean, sometimes I think people kind of look at stuff and try to find things to kind of be angry about. Do you know what I mean? And
Yeah,
turning something into something it's not. But I think it's good to have conversation because it shows that stuff has affected people and mattered, whether they liked what happened in it or not. And I don't think Jake's a bad dad at all. Going back to what I was saying, earlier, I think he's tough on the kids, and has these worries about he doesn't think he's good enough. He doesn't think he was good enough to be Tarek Makto, and his job is to protect them.
yeah,
And he's worried about that, and he's terrified of the humans coming back and taking everything that they've built. And at the end of the film, he's proved right.
hmm
In all of that. But no, I don't think he's a bad parent. Again, I think it's a character journey, and you already see that
yeah,
with the way things change with Light. Like I was saying, I see you, son.
yeah,
He's gone from he's not violent towards him at all,
not
but
at all.
he's verbally tough, and
Hmm.
like when I started my filmmaking work, my dad didn't think it would get anywhere, not because I wasn't good at it, for example, but
It's like with
because
me and my writing.
yeah, it's a tough thing to get into. And there's that worry, my dad had that worry of, well, maybe, you should just get a proper job,
Yeah,
and he was tough on me about it, and it
yeah,
wasn't, but, because he didn't love me, it was the opposite,
yeah,
and it's
yeah,
just, I think sometimes people don't quite know how to articulate things and
yeah.
express things. And yeah, so no, I don't think at all that Jake is a bad parent,
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
and
totally. I mean, particularly in my late teens, if I was ever sort of underachieving in Dad's views, I'd catch hell.
Mm, yeah,
you know,
and there is an element of you got to let your kids do what they want to do and live their life and stuff like that. But they've got to you want them to stick to a path and do well and be happy and all of that. And I think like you said, your dad would give you hell if you weren't doing great, but it's
yeah,
because he's got your best interests at heart. Because the alternative of failing and going off the rails, when you're a teenager, you think you know everything and you've got the world in under control, but
hmm
your parents, they know what it's like,
yeah.
and
They
that's
know,
such a
yeah, they
old
know
dad
sort of,
thing to
they know
say,
about
but
the 20 years that are ahead of you more
yeah,
than you do in a way, because you
yeah,
can't really conceive of anything. I think teenagers have this really interesting. Uh, yeah, I mean, their perspective is very much siloed in a permanent now.
yeah,
And that's what it's like to be in your late teens. Sort of everything from sort of 16 onwards. It's kind of you're very much in that kind of permanent now mindset. I mean, yeah,
yeah,
I think, and also you've got that kind of indestructibility mindset as well. And the only thing that really sort of burst that bubble when I was at that particular stage. I mean, I suppose I think it was about 17, 18. Was when a friend who I'd been at school in the same year with, he died of meningitis.
right,
And it's like almost like all of a sudden, like everybody in my school year who'd kind of gone up to sixth form, all the people that I knew, that knew him, we all suddenly started to feel slightly different, because it's unavoidable in a situation like that. But You have that kind of you have that kind of it's just the cockiness gene is something that's kind of built into the teen
Yeah,
experience.
yeah.
It's just part and parcel of it. It's part and parcel of kind of testing boundaries. And I mean, I know an awful lot of dads of my dad's generation who are kind of like Jake is in The Way of Water, and I know an awful lot of dads in my own generation who
Yeah.
are like Jake in this film.
Yeah. I'm the same with my kids. To tell them off for something, or be annoyed about something, and then think afterwards, actually, that was silly. Didn't need to be annoyed about that. But it's there's a lot going on, and you're trying to do the best for your kids, and guide them in the right way and stuff. And
Yeah, yeah.
so no, I don't. But you don't always get it right, And no, I don't think Jake's. Bad parent at all. And also, like you just said, Matt, when you're a teenager, you kind of push the boundaries, and you can see that with the kids when they go off into the the jungle, and they find do they find a helicopter in this one that's hanging in the tree?
Yeah.
Yeah, and because there's a bit of that in High Ground. Some of the stuff in High Ground happens in the film as well, so it's sort of showing you it, not like repeating it, but like the first book is kind of filling you in on stuff a little bit more. Like it tells you that Kiri is the only person that Jake ever met that just said hello to a banshee and could ride it. Didn't have to fight with it or anything. It's just again her connection with Awa. But the kids go off and do essentially dumb things, and that's what lands them in Quaritch's hands in the film, isn't it? Because they've been in the woods at that point, and if they hadn't done that, that wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, I mean, just look at. I mean, this is not sort of unprecedented in Cameron's work. I mean, if you look at Edward Furlong as John Connor in Terminator 2, and if you look at Eliza Dushku as Dana in True Lies, I mean, they're kind of real off the hook teens.
Yeah.
I mean, John plundering loads of cash from ATMs using some bizarre technical implement that I haven't been able to work out. Did anyone ever make one of those? And Dana kind of cruising around on her boyfriend's bike and ripping off her
friend,
dad. This is all this is the only way that you sort of figure out the right way to go in life is if you kind of stumble into the bits of the wrong ways.
Exactly.
So thank you both so much. Geoff, where can people find you if they want to catch up with you?
So I'm on Twitter at Geoff Cockwell, which is GEOFF, and I also run a Doctor Who podcast called Who Corner to Corner, and our Twitter handle is at Who C2C, the letter C, number 2, letter C. We do episode reviews and talk to other fans and talk to people from the show as well. So if any Whovians are listening, do check us out.
And Matt, where can people find you?
I'm very simply at MJP Writer.
Amazing. And both thank you so much for coming on. I look forward to having you both on again in the future. I'm sure you will come to me with loads of other topic ideas. And thank you all for continuing to listen into the new year as we enter the Avatar The Way of Water era of Sivako Road to Avatar. So thank you all for listening, and goodbye. And now for our special announcement. Sivako Road to Avatar is now on Patreon. So if you want to support the show and get a little bit extra content, you can go over to www.patreon.com/avatarpod. There are 3 tiers: an Elu tier, a Skimwing tier, and a Tolkun tier, which all have their own unique things that you can get involved with and some extra content to listen to. So why not sign up, show your support, and I'll see you again soon.